Yes, my prayer today is that He fills you with a passion for righteousness. Lord, my prayer today is that Jesus will guide you through every storm. Yes, every storm. Lord, every storm. This is my prayer today.
I'm here because I am a roaring lion crying out, righteousness. Welcome, everybody, to the Trust in the Lord Hour. I'm your 14-year host, James David, Trusting in the Lord Manning. How's everybody doing today? This is our prayer today. Got a lot to cover today. Listen, I've been doing Bible study and Bible teaching now, being a pastor for 40 years plus. And I have to tell you what I started teaching last time you and I were together, in addition to many other things that Proverbs chapter 3 has produced. There are probably what I want to say today are two new revelations of a person who has spanned the Bible teaching for 40 years. Some would call me a trained theologian. I did earn a master's degree at Union Theological Seminary here in New York City. And so I've been a pastor and substantial teacher of the Bible nearly every day. But I've discovered what I would want to refer to as two new revelations built in some basic knowledge that we've had previously. But this is a very exciting time. So I want you to pay very careful attention as I go through segment number 2 For Your Ears and Blessings Only, because what I'm going to say to you is an elevated teaching for those who have qualified, have given themselves over to the fact that the laws of Moses are more enduring than planet Earth itself or that great ball of fire in the sky called the sun. That the laws of Moses, being the word of God, is more enduring, has a longer lifespan than the earth itself, and it is impervious to destruction. However, the one thing that Satan has done is now, in more recent modern times, has told people to neglect the law with a vast misinterpretation of a statement made by the Apostle Paul regarding the Gentiles being excluded from the law, but now being engulfed, being taken in by the law, by the blood of the Lord Jesus Christ. I'll get to that in a more definite way. But there are those of us who've gone ahead now and have accepted the laws of Moses. And I have to tell you that there are going to be two revelations. One is that I'm going to, if you will, show you how Solomon, who wrote Proverbs that we have been dancing on for the last 14 years, and Solomon, who wrote about favor, which is something Moses never really talked about, or Joshua or any of the prophets, but Solomon wrote about this thing called favor in the context where your enemies will bless you, where your enemies will bless you with the blessings of God. Now, please make note of that. Pay careful attention, those of you who make notes of what I teach. Make note of this, where your enemies will bless you with the enemies, with the blessings of God. That is favor. When your enemies come to you, and they bless you with God's blessing from your enemy's hands, that is favor at its utopian state. I'm going to be revealing that today if I get enough opportunity to get to it, and how Solomon does this. 500 years after the death and time of Solomon, that these words become fleshed out in the books of Ezra and Nehemiah, and the book of Daniel, it's just a great revelation, especially for one who I consider myself pretty astute in teaching the Word of God. I've been here for 40 years, and yet I'm discovering this tremendous power of favor where your enemies will bless you with the blessings of God. And so we're gonna read chapter 3 of Proverbs, written by Solomon. These words, I'm going to give a general dating. These words written by Solomon were written perhaps just about 1,000 years before the birth of the Lord Jesus Christ, or before what the historians on the secular worldly side called before the Christian era. Before the Common Era. These words I'm going to read to you now are roughly about 3,000 years old, but they have been preserved. And I can tell you this, my brother and my sister, that there are very few documents or words written by anybody that's at least 3,000 or more years old. We'll get back to that. We'll talk about Sanskrit, and we'll talk about some Chinese, Confucius, Hindu stuff. You don't want to get into all that nonsense today. We'll do that when we got some time to sit down at a desk in a classroom and a chalkboard. But these words were written about 3,000 years ago. And while there are several segments that Solomon points up who lived 3,000 years ago or 1,000 years before the Common Era, wrote this. He said, "My son, forget not my law," that's the law of God, "but let thine heart keep my commandments." This is one of the things. He starts out right away, Solomon does, and you're going to be blessed. I pray I can explain this. I pray I can show you how these words 500 years later take perhaps the greatest life source. I mean, it's than any words of Moses or crossing the Red Sea. How these words I'm going to read to you now, 500 years later will rise up as this beauty and power in a tragic and a sad yet prophetic time. Lord Jesus Christ, help me to explain this to so many friends that are listening to me right now. So Solomon writes that the law of God will give you length of days. You'll live long. You'll have a long life, and you'll have peace. This is what the law of God will do to you. And he goes on to say, "Let not mercy and truth forsake thee. Bind them about thy neck," which gives undergirding to the law of God. "Write them on the table of thine heart." And this is the, if you will, title tune verse that we're going to focus on today. Now, so the law of God does a multitudinous number of great and wonderful and awesome things, but this is what we're going to focus on today, is favor. And this favor could be, you could get favor by favor. That means you are favorite, you are favored. People look upon you with an eye to bless you. People look upon you with an eye of delight. People look upon you with an eye of protection and advancement. But this favor that Solomon is writing about now, that's going to be demonstrated some 500 years later, is extraordinary. It's extraordinary. So Solomon writes, "So shalt thou find favor and good understanding in the sight of God and man." This key verse, where I'm not so busy with so many other things, I would sit down. I'd probably go out someplace like Phoenix, Arizona. There's a town out there, Phoenix, I get the name of it now. I'd go out to Arizona someplace, or maybe, I don't know, or someplace in Utah, and I would write. And I spent some time, I would write about how this magnificent event that took place in the life of Ezra and in the life of Nehemiah, where they found favor in the sight of God and of man, but prophesied. And we don't really think about Solomon so much as a prophet, but if I was talking so much here, this is extraordinary. This is a mighty confirmation of the word of God, materialized some 500 years later, and in the most powerful, demonstrative way, I think, has been seen since the crossing of the Red Sea. and the building of the temple of God by Solomon. After the temple of Solomon had been torn down and had existed the temple of Solomon had existed for some 300 to 400 years, maybe 500 years, then it was torn down, then rebuilt because of this one word called favor. But the favor could not exist, could not be displayed towards Ezra and Nehemiah unless they kept the law of God. It was the very fact of the law of God, not their skin color, not their height, not their weight, not their agenda, not their intellect, it was the one thing that brought if you will, Niagara Falls rush of favor into the life of Ezra and Nehemiah is that they kept the law. They kept the Sabbath. And if you don't mind, say they kept the first fruit offering and they kept the tithe as well. By the way, I just been dating this. Today is Ash Wednesday. In the event that somebody's interested, that's Catholic. I'm not really going to get into that very much. I mean, I do observe it. I understand it. The 40 days prior to the Pentecost and the celebration season, I understand all of that. And maybe I'll talk more about that in the Bible study later tonight. But this favor, well, let's get to it. I'll tell you what, let's do. All right, here's what I'm going to ask the engineer to take me, because this favor was poured out upon two people that kept the law in the face of adversity. You know what I thought was a beautiful teaching last time you and I were together is that I said that Daniel, who was carried away captive, he was just a boy, and he was carried away captive from his homeland in Judah to Babylon. He was offered a job as a counselor, something like Secretary of State or, one of the secretaries of the cabinet of Nebuchadnezzar. He turned it down. He was thrown in the lion's den for ultimately only praying and worshiping God. And Shadrach and Meshach and Abednego also were offered some very powerful positions as governors of some of the provinces of Persia and Babylon and the Medes. They turned it down and they were thrown into the fiery furnace. But this was early on. This is before Artaxerxes, this is before Darius, this is before Cyrus. And this was mainly during the period of Babylon or Belteshazzar, who had been the one who brought them away captive, and it was not for the purpose. What was offered to Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego as this prestigious position as governor, as counselors, was not to advance the kingdom of God, and it wasn't favor either. And we'll talk about that. There is so much packed into these three books of Ezra, Nehemiah, and Esther. It is mind-boggling. But this favor thing, and I'm praying the Lord will give me, I'm hesitating a little bit about actually getting into the reading now, because I'm praying, Lord, help me to explain this, because I know what I know, but I pray what I know I can teach other people here today so they can understand this magnificent act of God some 400 years after the death of Solomon, of the prophecy that if you keep the law, you're going to get favor. All right, come on, Mr. Engineer, let's go to chapter 5 of the book of Ezra. And I'm going to be doing a lot of reading. I have to confess to you, I'm not the best reader, and I got a bad eye. My right eye is a bad eye. Some lesbian woman tried to punish me for what I believe about the Word of God, and I believe that LGBTQ is wrong, and she tried to punish me by taking away my sight. All right, so one of my eyes is bad, and the other one is not so good. And then even prior, when I had good eyes, I wasn't the best reader. I don't know why. I think I had this thing called dyslexia, where I get ahead of myself and my words turn around, and so I have to reorganize the words it's like reading left-handed. It's like reading Hebrew when you read from right to left. Anyway, so let's go and try this now. All right. Then the prophets, Haggai, the prophet, and Zedekiah, the son of Edu, prophesied unto the Jews that were in Judah and Jerusalem in the name of the God of Israel, even unto them. Then rose up Zerubbabel, the son of Shealtiel, and Jeshua, the son of Jozadak, and began to build the house of God, which is at Jerusalem, and with them were the prophets of God helping them. Now, this is in the category of prior to Ezra returning. At the same time came to them Tatniah, governor on this side of the river, and Shealtiel, and their companions, and said thus unto them, who have commanded you to build this house and to make up this wall? Now, Haggai and Zedekiah were prophets now in the returning process of the Jews. This other creep with this very long name, when they saw what was going on, came over there to instigate. Verse 4. Then said we unto them after this manner, what are the names of the men that make this building? But the eye of their God was upon the elders of the Jews, that they could not cause them to cease, till the matter came to Darius. Darius was the son of Artaxerxes. We'll get to that a little bit later on. And so the geographical history of the historical history of this is mind-boggling. But I'll get to that. And then they returned answer by letter concerning this matter. A copy of the letter that Tataniah, governor on this side of the river, and Shaltahbozeanah and his companions, and Aspersacates, which were on the side of the river, sent unto Darius the king, and sent a letter unto wherein was written thus unto Darius the king, all peace. Be it known unto the king that we went into the province of Judah to the house of the great God, which is built with great stones, and timber is laid in the walls, and this work goeth fast on and prospereth in their hands. Now, they're writing letters back to Babylon that somebody's working on the house that Solomon had built some 400 years later. Then asked we the elders and said unto them, thus, who commanded you to build this house and to make up these walls? We asked the name also to certify thee, that we might write the name of the men that were the chief of them. And thus they returned us answers, saying, we asked the servants of the God of heaven and earth, and build the house that was built these many years ago, which a great king of Israel built, which is Solomon, and set up. But after that our fathers had provoked the God of heaven unto wrath by not keeping the law, he gave them into the hand of Nebuchadnezzar. So Darius is writing back, Artaxerxes or Darius is writing back to these creeps and giving them the answer of what they want, so the building can continue. He gave them into the hand of Nebuchadnezzar, the king of Babylon, and the Chaldean, who destroyed this house and carried the people away into Babylon. Okay, we've gone over that. But in the first year of Cyrus, the king of Babylon, the same King Cyrus made a decree to build this house of God. So that's where the authority comes from. And check this. This is the beautiful part about favor. This is the thing, last time we were together, I mean, it's just a sure enough stomp down blessing. Listen to this. And all the vessels also of gold and silver of the house of God, which Nebuchadnezzar took out of the temple that was in Jerusalem and brought them into the temple of Babylon, those did Cyrus the king take out of the temple of Babylon, and they were delivered unto me, whose name is Sheshbazzar, whom he had made governor, and said unto him, take these vessels. Now, just to pause there, Mr. Engineer, all the vessels that were taken out of the house of God in the Nebuchadnezzar war, the year 524 war, and were taken to Babylon and put in the temple of Babylon. They're now being taken out of the temple of Babylon, given to Ezra to come back. This is what I'm talking about when I say the favor that when your enemies, the people that had the Jews in captivity, gave them all the gold and silver that belonged to them to go back to the house of God, as they were now, as Zerubbabel was now beginning to rebuild the house of God that had been destroyed some 400, 500 years earlier. You just don't get no better than that. When your enemies give you back everything that was taken from you. It just don't get no better than that. It just don't get no better than that. But it's the favor of God that's on Ezra. And it's because he keeps the law. And because God has entrusted to him all this gold and all this silver. Listen to me, my friends. My friends, please listen to me. God is entrusting to Ezra all of this gold and silver that was fashioned by the hand of Solomon 500 years before Ezra was born. Gold and silver shields that were 100 pounds heavy, 100 pounds of gold, that before Ezra was born, God is entrusting this extraordinary wealth of the wealthiest man on the planet. Solomon was the wealthiest man ever lived. Now God is giving that wealth to Ezra for one reason. For one reason. Ezra has demonstrated in the time that he was in captivity in the hands of the enemy, he kept the law of God. And what Ezra demonstrated, what God saw in Ezra, was that Ezra kept the law of God when he was barefoot, when he was poor, when he was hungry, when he was in prison. Ezra never stepped away from Sabbath worship. Ezra never stepped away from the tithe, from the first fruit offering. So when God saw that Ezra was faithful in keeping the law, he gave him the entire treasure that Solomon once had. Now, you have to think about this favor this way. All the money, all the treasure, all the gold that Solomon once had, God gives it to another man named Ezra to bring it back to the house of God. And let me just pull your coat to some of y'all out there who listen, but you're stubborn. Let me pull your coat. Do you think God would trust you with that much? God would trust you with the inheritance of Solomon, the wealthiest man on the planet, if he can't trust you with the tithe? If God can't trust you with the first fruit offering? If you fudge on that, or if you rebel on the first fruit offering, which is regarding money, if you rebel on the tithe, do you think that God would trust you with all that gold? Listen, God put in the hands of Ezra all the gold that Solomon ever owned. I mean, think about it for just a second. And where the favor comes in is that God causes the enemy of Ezra, Nebuchadnezzar, who tore down, burned down the temple, took away all the gold, to give it back to one man called Ezra. Talking about favor. And not because it was because Ezra kept the law. You have to wonder, will God trust you with anything at all? Not of anything of value, but will God trust you with anything if he can't trust you to keep the Sabbath, to do your own thing? See, if God gave you all that gold, you say, well, I'll give some of it to the temple, but I ain't going to give no whole week's paycheck to the temple. I'm going to keep some of this for myself. I'll give some of it to the temple, but I ain't going to keep no Sabbath. I'll worship on Sunday. That's just as good. See, you see what I'm saying? You see, you look at your money and say, well, I ain't gonna give all this to God. I got to keep something for myself. I ain't gonna give all this to temple. Now hold tight to this lesson. Ezra gave every bit of Solomon's wealth. God gave every piece of gold, every piece of silver, every piece of shittim wood, every piece of cedar, every piece of badger skin dyed red, every piece of mohair, every piece of purple curtain. God gave every last bit of that train load to Ezra because he could trust Ezra to make sure it got to the house of God. Now, God gives some of y'all good paychecks, give some of y'all, well, God don't give you, but you get good paychecks, but you don't make sure it gets to the house of God. But the better lesson, I think, because those of us who are already doing that, we don't have to be scolded about that, because we make sure what God gives us gets to the house of God. No delay. Gets to the house of God before we pay our rent, before we pay our car note. It gets to the house of God We know that. But the blessing here is that it was Ezra's enemies that God used to give it. Imagine this. God told Joshua, he said, Moses, my servant, is dead. You're up now. You got to lead this group. But what I'm reading to you, my friend, is that all of the gold and all of the silver and all the precious things, all of the shittim wood, all of the cedar, all of the badger skin dyed red, all of the mohair, all of that once belonged to this great man called Solomon, God gave it back to one man called Ezra. And he gave it to Ezra because he could trust Ezra to make sure that all that tithe and all that first fruit offering got back to the house of God where it belonged. And here you are with a little old paycheck every week, and God can't trust you. And some of y'all with a monthly check from Social Security, and God can't trust you. You see? You see what I'm saying? So now, all right, Mr. Engineer, I'm going to take a break, right? Mr. Engineer, I'm going to take a break right here. I'm going to take a break, and I want you to, first of all, dwell on the things that we've said. This is, here, was it because Solomon prophesied that you shall find favor, that it commanded Darius and Cyrus and Artaxerxes to do as they did? You got a 500-year-old piece of gold that weighs 40 pounds. You got a drinking cup that weighs 7 pounds that can hold, so much wine. And you got hundreds of them that Solomon had. When Solomon would invite people to dinner. And every last one of those pieces of gold and silver was given to one man because God could trust him to make sure it got to the house of God. I'm going to be right back here, everybody. Hold tight. Take a look at this, and I'll be right back.
What is one of your favorite meals that you have had here?
Burgers and fries.
The food's delicious.
The rice and the chicken and cornbread.
As it
The food is
should.
wonderful. You see it made in the kitchen. They have sandwiches, soups, waffles.
Everything.
Everything.
It's always gourmet breakfast made fresh every day. I personally love Sister Leah's eggs. It is amazing. I can't even begin to fathom the airy taste. Literally, guys, a couple days ago, I was by the kitchen and I was just, the eggs was just really good. It was really good. Really good.
Agree with that statement.
Really good.
What do you think about Pastor Manning? How do you like it?
I feel like Pastor is a very great man. He's honest, he's giving, and he likes to help the younger ones become future leaders.
Yes.
I feel like that's a great trait because people nowadays, they don't really care about others. They care about themselves. They have the trait to care for somebody else, to listen to their problems and help them grow as another person. It's rare to find, and I feel like that's a great trait about him.
It isn't just about making bent legs straight. It's about enabling these children to re-enter society. Someday they can marry, they can get a job, they can work. It really, truly gives them their life back.
Their medical photos that we take kind of show it all. Their pre-op picture, none of them are smiling and they all look really scared. And then in their post-op picture, they have the biggest smiles on and they're so happy. I mean, it's only 2 pictures, but you can see that a journey has happened.
They never even dared to dream before, and now suddenly it's reality that they can dream and that these dreams could actually come true.
All right, so we're studying now from the book of Proverbs, chapter 3, focusing on verse 4, where Solomon writes that if you keep the law, you shall find favor and good understanding in the sight of God and man. And we're now focusing on the historical books of the Babylonian captivity and the returning Jews to Judah to rebuild the temple and to rebuild the wall. And the extraordinary favor that was bestowed upon Ezra. Now, we'll get to Nehemiah and some other segments, where Solomon, the wisest, richest man ever lived, and all the gold and silver he had in his house, all the gold and silver that was in the temple, all the other precious things, such as shittim wood, cedar wood, badger skin dyed red, purple curtains, mohair curtains, all of that was taken back to the treasury in Babylon by Nebuchadnezzar. Trainloads of Solomon's wealth was taken back to Babylon and kept there. 500 years later, or 400 years later, Cyrus issues a decree that Ezra can now go back to, the Jews can now go back to Jerusalem, according to the prophecy of Jeremiah, to rebuild Jerusalem and Judah and the temple. And Cyrus gives to Ezra all of the wealth that once belonged to Solomon is now in the hand of one man called Ezra. It's called favor. The Babylonians didn't want to keep it because God had written on the wall, many tekel during the days of Nebuchadnezzar. And many tekel, many rather. And so they just put that stuff in the storage in the temple in Babylon, which is a false god temple, and then nobody touched it. Nobody stole it. Everybody was scared of it because they knew it belonged to God and it belonged to Solomon. So God trusts one man called Ezra with the entire wealth of Solomon, because he knew that Ezra would get all of that, would not take anything for himself, that Ezra would bring all of that gold and all that silver and all those precious things back to the house of God where it belongs. And so we're making a sub-story out of this, a sub-event out of this, about how God can't even trust you with the tithe. You won't even bring the tithe to God, so God doesn't trust you. But it's the fact that the law of God that Ezra kept, even in the time when he was barefoot and ragged and imprisoned, he kept the law of God. As a result of that, God knew that he could trust him. Let's go back to Ezra chapter 5, Mr. Engineer, and back to verse 15. Is it? Let's back up to 14 just 1 second. See if I want to read that again. Listen to that. Now watch this, everybody. And the vessels also of gold and silver of the house of God, that's Solomon. Read this way, all the vessels of gold, all of Solomon's vessels of gold, all of Solomon's vessels of silver, all of that which had been of the house of God, which Nebuchadnezzar took out of the temple that was in Jerusalem and brought them into the temple of Babylon. Those did Cyrus the king take out of the temple of Babylon, and they were delivered unto one man, whose name was Shabbassar, whom also was made governor, which is Ezra. And unto him said, take these vessels, go, carry them into the temple that is in Jerusalem, and let the house of God be built in his place. And then came the same Sheshbazzar and laid the foundation of the house of God, which is in Jerusalem. And since that time until now hath it been in building, and yet is not finished. Now therefore, it seemed good to the king, to let the search be made in the king's treasure, which is there in Babylon, whether it be so that a decree be made of Cyrus, the king, to build this house of God at Jerusalem, and let the king send his pleasure to us concerning this matter. Next verse, next chapter. So this is a fascinating historical event, and probably one that doesn't get a lot of attention because mainly the false prophets don't understand it. The false prophets don't preach this because it challenges them. They don't preach anything that challenges the fact. It's hard for them to preach about the power of the law if they themselves don't keep the Sabbath. See, this is a magnificent, this is probably one of the best prosperity teachers the whole world has ever heard, that one man shall be given all the wealth of Solomon because he keeps the Sabbath. He keeps the tithe. He keeps the first fruit offering. Well, the prosperity preacher, the Joe Osteens in that crowd and the Rick Warrens of the world, they're not going to preach this. They can't preach it because glaring, underneath the reason why this favor was given to Ezra is because he kept the law. Well, they don't keep the law. Osteen don't keep the law. And, you know, these other preachers, they don't, Kenneth Copeland, they don't keep the law. So therefore they have to skip. But these chapters, if you're following me, I don't know how deep you've been into the books of Ezra and Nehemiah in times gone by in your early teachings of the Bible, but these are fascinating books, but the reason why they don't go down this road is because they themselves, so Joel Osteen can't stand up and preach this because he himself don't do it. And the moment he started talking about this happened because he kept the law, that would condemn him, and everybody would get up and walk out of that place out there he's got. Same thing with Kenneth Copeland or Rick Warren or with Jakes. People would get up and say, well, you're preaching something you don't do yourself. So they stay away from these kind of books. They stay and hang around the verses about, that doesn't condemn them. And that's why a lot of people want to get rid of the law because the Old Testament, because it condemns them. All right, let's go into Ezra number 6. And then Darius, the king, made a decree. And search was made in the house of the Rose, where the treasures were laid up in Babylon. And there was found at Achmeta in the palace that is in the province of the Medes. Now, you have to, Babylon had a major province called Medes and a major province called Persia, which, why we get these, if you will, Darius and Cyrus and Artaxerxes and Nebuchadnezzar and Belteshazzar. We'll go through that a little bit later when we try to divide up the provinces of Babylon, which contain two other major metropolis areas, one called Persia, a province of Persia, and the other province of Medes. So now we've gotten completely out of the temple of Babylon, so we're going to find it in the temples of the Medes. A roll, and therein was a record thus written. And in the first year of Cyrus the king, the same Cyrus the king made a decree concerning the house of God at Jerusalem. Let the house be built. Let the house be built. Now this is the favor of God. And many say that God anointed Cyrus. We'll discuss that a little bit later. But this is favor. Let the house be built, the place where they offered sacrifices, and let the foundations thereof be strongly laid. The height thereof, 60 cubits, that's 60 cubits, and the breadth thereof, 60 cubits. We'll talk about that as well when we get in a little more detailed study. With these 3 rows of great stones and a row of new timber. Cyrus writes about building God. Cyrus is not a Jew. He's a Babylonian. He's a Persian. But the favor of God on Ezra, God's causing this man to do all these things to this one man called Ezra because he kept the law. God is in control. He's in control. He sits high and looks low. Anyway. And with 3 rows of great stones and a row of new timber, and let the expenses be given out of the king's house. Cyrus said, I'll pay for it. And also that the golden and silver vessels of the house of God, which Nebuchadnezzar took forth out of the temple, which is at Jerusalem, be brought unto Babylon, be restored, which brought again unto the temple, and brought again rather unto the temple, which is at Jerusalem, even one to his place, and place them in the house of God. This is awesome. I pray y'all catching the drift here. Now, therefore, let Tatniah, governor beyond the river, and Shethas, Bosniah, and your companions, the Aspersakites, which are beyond the river, be yet far from thence. Let the work of the house of God alone. Don't listen, all y'all kings beyond the river, you little jealous, little puny kings, you're sitting in your little old kingdom, you think you're something, you're sitting on your throne. Listen, when I send the Jews back through your country, and because you know what's going on, they're rebuilding the house of God, don't you mess with them. Don't you mess with them, you little old tiny phony named kings. Don't you mess with Ezra, because they're going to rebuild the house of God. Let the work be done. Let the governor of the Jews and the elders of the Jews build the house of God in his place. This is favor beyond belief. Moreover, Cyrus says, I make a decree that ye shall do to the elders of these Jews for the building of the house of God, that of the king's good, even of the tribute beyond. In other words, y'all give them something too. Good God Almighty. Woo! Cyrus is saying to these little old straw kings, they ain't really about much. They got a little small kingdom. Ain't nothing really going on. They ain't got nothing, but they raising sand because they see this house going up. Somebody building a house over there in Jerusalem for the house of God. They'd heard about it 500 years earlier. They wondered this going to cause them to lose their kingdom. So Cyrus writes a note and said, not only y'all better not mess with them, but when they come through, y'all give them something too. It don't get no better. I read it for you. Watch this. Moreover, Cyrus said, I make a decree. What we shall do to the elders, shall do to the elders of these Jews for the building of this house of God. Talking about favor. And by the way, Solomon wrote this. Now his temple, his work is being revisited. It don't get no better than this. And Bible teaching them, it don't get no better than this. 500 years after Solomon wrote that if you keep the law, that there'll be favor, his temple was torn down because the Jews failed to keep the law, and now God is causing Cyrus to write a decree to rebuild the temple and to restore all the gold and all the vessels. Favor! So Cyrus writes to these little tin-pot kings, when Ezra passed through you give him something too. You give him some gold. You give him this. I'll start over. Moreover, I make a decree that ye shall do to these elders of the Jews for the building of this house of God, that of the king's goods, even of the tribute beyond the river, forthwith, expenses be given unto them, these men, that ye be not hindered. I'm sorry, that they be not hindered. So you give them something, don't mess with them. This is God at his best. You got Solomon's prophecy coming to life. His temple torn down, but it's being restored again because of the law, the keepers of the law, Ezra and Nehemiah. And then you got God at his best using the enemies of God and making the enemies of God bow down and favor the keepers of the law of God. This is God at his best. This is God at his best. I mean, when they first came into Jerusalem and took down Jericho, okay, all right, that's a big story. Wall came down, all that good stuff. But this is God at his best. This is God talking talk. This is kind of God I like to talk about. This is God talking to talk. God saying, listen, they're going to rebuild it because they keep my law. And don't you try to stop them. In fact, you give them something, you give them of your gold and your silver. All of Solomon's wealth is being restored, all of it being restored. But when they come through when they pass through your little old county, your little old tin-pot county, the little tin-pot town where you think you're some kind of king, make sure you give them something too. Lord have mercy. It don't get no better than this. I tell you right now. It just don't get no better than this. It don't get no better than this. Verse 9. And they which have need of both young bullocks, in other words, and rams and lambs for the burnt offerings of the God of heaven, wheat, salt, wine, and oil, according to the appointment of the priests which are at Jerusalem, let it be given them day by day without fail. Lord have mercy. It don't get no better than this. I'm telling you, it don't get no better than this. While they're passing through your land, if they want to keep the Passover, if they want to keep the holy days, if they need lambs and bullocks for burnt offering, if they need salt, if they need wheat, if they need oil, and they're in your land, give it to them. Do it every day that they need it. As long as they're in your, this is God at it. I call this the mafia God. Lord have mercy. Lord have mercy. Give it to them day by day. It don't get no better than this, my friend. Talking about favor. Now, all of this is happening because of verse 4. Verse 1 of Proverbs chapter 3 and verse 4. Without Solomon having issued 400 years earlier, Proverbs chapter 3, verse 1 and verse 4, none of this will be happening. None of this. So it's the prophecy and it's the feedback, it's the re-blessing, it's the authentication, it's the vindication of Solomon. Though God let that temple be burnt down and torn down and all the gold and silver and all those precious things taken back to Babylon, because the Jews at the time didn't want to keep the Sabbath, didn't want to keep the laws. Now God's saying, I found a man or a few men, Ezra and Nehemiah, that do, and I'm going to restore everything that was taken by Babylon, by Nebuchadnezzar, every last bit of it going back. And by the way, while they're on their way back, you little old 10-pot kings think y'all something. You ain't nothing. You ain't never been nothing. You ain't going to never be nothing. But I want to make sure you make, if they need lambs, if they want to hold a sacrifice in your country, because they got a long walk taking all this stuff back. If they want to hold a sacrifice and they need lambs, bullocks, or rams, give them to them. Give them to them. Call this the mafia God. Yeah. I don't know if that works too good, but anyway, sounds good right now. Verse 10, that they may offer sacrifices of sweet savor unto the God of heaven and pray for the life of the king and of his sons. Also, Cyrus says, I made a decree that whosoever shall alter this word. Now watch, this is the thing. I taught this many years ago. Some of y'all might remember, because I went through the book of it. I've taught these books before. I've done them several times. But this verse I like because it kind of talks the mafia talk I like. It says, also I made a decree that if there's anybody that tries to alter, tries to hurt the people, or and don't give them what I said give to Ezra and Nehemiah, or try to make sure that they don't have lambs or bullocks to sacrifice, or try to, impede their way on their way, let timber be pulled down from his house. Let timber be pulled down from his house, and being set up, let him be hanged by the temple, Lord. This is showing up God. This is mafia God. I just got to go ahead and say it. I know what y'all think about the mafia, the dons and all that, but this is the mafia God. God said, listen, anybody who messed with Ezra and Nehemiah, pull the timber down out of his house and make a gallows and hang that lowlife. Hang him with timber from his own house. That'll get the word out. That'll get everybody else in line. Let timber be pulled down from his house, and being set up, let him be hanged thereon, and let his house be made a dunghill. Well, if you don't know what dung is, some people call it feces. Some people call it another four-letter word I'm not permitted to speak. But let it become a feces hill for what he has done, trying to hinder my people. This is the kind of God I want to serve. This kind of God I want. I got to stop here today. There's more. I told you when I first drove up with this series of teaching out of Proverbs chapter 3, verse 4, that's going to take us a little time to get through all of this. But the favor This is for your ears and your eyes only, because your ears and your blessings only, because they're going to people hear me right now. There are people that listen to me right now, about 100, so maybe about 1,000, and they're not going to cross over. They're going to keep on worshiping on Sunday. They're going to refuse to send an offering to this ministry. They're going to refuse the tithe. They're going to refuse the first fruit. They're going to keep on doing it. So this isn't for them. It's for your ears and your blessings only. I'm James David Manning, everybody. This is an exciting time. It's a very exciting time in which we now find ourselves. I will return with more of this teaching. This is a very exciting part of teaching. I'm excited to be, and I'm so excited that some of y'all are drinking these words, eating these words, and drinking the wine of these beautiful words of the God that that sends all that trusts one man with all of Solomon. I mean, you can see Ezra was a Solomon Jr. At any rate, everybody, take a look at this. I want to present to you a young couple we got in our church. I love this couple. I think they look good together. I performed their wedding ceremony not long ago. I love this young couple. I look at it and say, these are my children, right? I love them. They did. These are my children. I got a whole lot of children. You ought to come to this church and see all the children I got. All of them, man. And anyway, these are my children. They're a little bit younger. They got married not long ago, and they're both very accomplished musicians. And so I'm going to, and I think my daughter, she wrote a song after listening to teach for one night. God gave her a song. Check it out. Then I'm going to let Brother Honecker, he'll come in and wrap everything up.
The steps of a good man are ordered by the Lord, and he delighteth in his way. Though he fall, he shall not be cast down, for the Lord uphold him with his hand. We shall never beg bread, and will never be defeated, for the Lord is our refuge and our shield. We shall never beg bread, and will never be defeated, for the Lord is our shelter and our shield. I have been young and now am old, yet have I never ever seen the righteous forsaken, nor seed begging bread. He is merciful and he is blessed. We shall never beg bread, and will never be defeated, for the Lord is our refuge and our shield. We shall never beg bread, and will never be defeated, for the Lord is our shelter and our shield. Yeah. For the Lord is our refuge and our strength. Oh, we shall never beg bread, and will never be defeated, for the Lord, you're our refuge and our strength. Yeah, we shall never beg bread, and will never be defeated, for the Lord, you're our shelter and our strength. For the Lord, you're our refuge and our strength. Just the violins. We shall never beg bread, and will never be defeated, for the Lord, you're our refuge and our shield. We shall never beg bread, and will never be defeated, for the Lord
to preach righteous and true. You're a sharecropper, son, Pastor Manning. The things you've been through, the Obama years, tribulation Trump too. Pastor Manning, you get knocked down, you get back up, you preach on holy ground. Pastor Manning, you're the one. You preach righteous and truth. You're a sharecropper's son.
I'm the Lord's servant. I'm asking now is to give truth a chance. All I've ever told anybody is the truth. Now, just because you didn't understand it doesn't mean it's not true. And I'm asking people to give truth a chance.
All around, you hear the lies being told from the top. Every time you turn around, it just don't seem to stop. When you're ready to move far beyond that same old dance, all you gotta do is listen, yeah, and give truth a chance.
Give truth a chance.
Everybody,
give truth a chance.
come on and sing it.
Give truth a chance. Give truth a chance.
I'm here because I am a roaring lion crying out righteousness. Welcome, everybody, to the Manning Report. I am Manning, and we've got gray skies. I get a shout out down to Sister Angela King. She's our top fan and supporter. What kind of weather are they having there in South Carolina? By the way, I don't know if y'all heard, there's a major blizzard heading from Northern California going east up across Montana and the Dakotas and into the Minnesota, the Michigan, and going north across New York State and possibly going to affect Deacon Waverly Marsh up in New Hampshire. I mean, bitter cold and tons of snow that's happening. So we're checking the weather. But we got great skies, as you can see over here in the Big Apple. There's a live shot behind me, as you can see. The people that are walking on this side of the aisle. See that bus going down? There's a bus going right underneath my arm. There's a small person walking in front of that building there. It's a live shot. So earlier this week, Lawrence O'Donnell, a boy from up there in Boston, Massachusetts, I think Lawrence O'Donnell probably had something to do with that. I was trying to think of the guy's name, Whitey Bulger. Remember that this guy's killed over 1,000 people, Whitey Bulger. Finally, he's been killed. They put him he was on the run for like 30 years, Whitey Bulger, 20 years. Nobody could find him. He was hiding out, he and his girlfriend. Whitey Bulger, one of the biggest gangsters. I mean, people talk about Al Capone and Jack's Legs Diamond, but Whitey Bulger in South Boston, one of the biggest gangsters ever lived. Boston, Massachusetts. Anyway, Lawrence O'Donnell comes from Boston, and he called Tucker Carlson a liar. You know, sometimes when these people on television and everywhere else, politicians and everybody, they don't actually they don't flat out to your face, up in your face, call you a liar. You know, they beat around the bush and insinuate. Lawrence O'Donnell called Tucker Carlson a liar. He called Sean Hannity a liar to his face. He called Laura Ingraham a liar. He called Janine Shapiro a liar. He called Rupert Murdoch, the boy from Down Under, called him a liar. And he didn't do it once. He did it for like 15 minutes. He kept calling them liars on MSNBC. So I figured, well, they're going to be a wall. This is, you got it, man. This is like talking to dozens. So I figured Tucker Carlson was going to get him. So last night I watched Tucker Carlson. And here's what Tucker Carlson led with. His lead story last night was this. And so I think I might as well wait and see what else going on, because I figure Tucker going to defend himself. He's going to defend. Plus they said that, he was trying to keep the ratings and money coming in and all. So here's what Tucker Carlson did last night.
Well, it looks like Don Lemon's long television career is finally over. Mr. Lemon has been sentenced by the High Court of Wokeness to a term in the HR gulag. He'll undergo a procedure called sensitivity training, which is always the first step to being disappeared, or in his case, to doing late-night infomercials on BET. Say goodbye to Don Lemon. His colleagues at CNN are adamant they don't want him back ever on moral grounds. So that's it. And we'll admit to feeling some sadness at this news. The prospect of cable without Don Lemon isn't quite as bright as we'd imagined. As the tide
There's a whole lot more, so don't run away. There's a whole lot more. And you might like this little part that Tucker Carlson does on Don Lemon. He calls him Lemon. So I'm going to let you hear most of it. But my question is this, Barbara Walters, Walter Cronkite, and a bunch of other, Chet Huntley and David Brinkley and all that crowd. You got that Boston, Massachusetts, Lawrence O'Donnell, Whitey Bulger guy, fighting Tucker Carlson and Rupert Murdoch and Sean Hannity. And rather than Tucker Carlson coming back and throwing mud at, what's his face, Whitey Boston, Massachusetts, Lawrence O'Donnell, he attacks Don Lemon from CNN. So you got these three men, right? Anyway, go ahead, Ms. India. Let's listen to the rest of this.
Dullness and uniformity sweeps over American culture as everything becomes the Apple Store. There was a certain joy in watching his unpredictable low IQ zaniness. Let's say you're a conventional news anchor working for a conventional news-based news network, and a Malaysian air flight disappeared over the Pacific. You would immediately think hijacking or mechanical failure. Not Don Lemon. Only he had the childlike creativity to imagine the plane had been swallowed by a black hole, in case you've forgotten that legendary moment.
What if it was hijacking or terrorism or mechanical failure or pilot error? But what if it was something fully that we don't really understand? A lot of people have been asking about that, about black holes and on and on and on. They're also referencing the Twilight Zone, which has a very similar plot. That's what people are saying. I know it's preposterous, but is it preposterous, you think?
Is it preposterous?
Well, now, hold on a second. I kind of believe in black holes. I mean, I don't think they're immediately within our sphere, within a couple of thousand light years, but I know they're out there. I don't know. And, a plane appeared. You know what? Here's a postscript or something I wanted to do a couple of weeks ago when that balloon was floating over America. You ever hear about the Bermuda Triangle? You ever heard about that? It's a place it's like an immediate black hole. And a lot of, pilots have gone into it, never returned. A whole squadron of pilots back in the 19-something flew into it, nobody ever heard of it. Ships have sailed into the black hole, they've never been returned, they've never been recovered. It's called a Bermuda Triangle. It's a reality, it really is. It's like a black hole off the coast of North Carolina, running down the coast of North Carolina, down to Midway, Florida, to Palm Beach, and then going out at a triangle, out into and it's squared off. It has actually has a mathematical dimension, the Bermuda Triangle. That's why I call it a triangle. So it's like a little black hole. So I'm not defending Don Lemon. I'm not defending him, nor am I criticizing Tucker Carlson. What I expected Tucker Carlson to do was go after Boston, Massachusetts, Lawrence O'Donnell, and Whitey Bulger. But okay, we'll take what he gave us. Here's what he served up last night. Let's listen to the rest of this.
If you will, but there was a kind of demented genius on display there, and we appreciated it. Now it's over. But the story of Don Lemon is more than about one man's dead career. It is, in fact, a fascinating tale that illustrates the growing darkness of American liberalism, something that affects all of us. Whatever else he was, Don Lemon was no ideologue. He'd never met a fixed belief. Don Lemon was a careerist. He was a man who rose in television by parroting the instructions of his bosses, who received their instructions from the Democratic Party. And in that way, Don Lemon is the perfect measure of how the nation is changing and where it's going.
Hold it. I have to tell you, Tucker, now you're a pretty powerful person. You're a pretty powerful voice. You got the biggest, largest audience. Listen, Alex Jones has got a more powerful audience. I have to tell you that. I don't want to disappoint you or anything. Alex doesn't have a major network behind him, but even now, Alex has got a much more powerful and longer standing and more supportive audience than you, Tucker, even though you're number one in cable news media with MSNBC, CBS, and Fox News. You're the boy. You're the one. Okay, I'll give you that. And kudos and congratulations. Having reached that, because at one time it was, with Sean Hannity. Actually, it was Bill O'Reilly on the same network you're on right now, Tucker. Bill O'Reilly was the man. He was it. And then behind him was Sean Hannity. And then Bill O'Reilly got caught squeezing some, woman, whatever it is he was doing, and they got rid of him. And so then Sean Hannity became number one. And you've taken some steps, Tucker, that made you number one. Okay, congratulations. But I think that for you to criticize Don Lemon for puppeting some stuff, it might be a little bit disingenuous. Anyway, go ahead and send you that.
During the Obama years, when we were all told the country might finally move past our divisive racial history, Don Lemon reflected the current trend. At one point, he even attempted one of those authentic conversations about race we were always being encouraged to have. Here it is.
Black people, if you really want to fix the problem.
Hold it. Now, this is the part of Don Lemon that I can appreciate. Tucker says he's not an ideologue, but what Don Lemon is going to say right now is I'm in 100% agreement with it. The problem is, and what Tucker Carlson is going to point out, is that Don Lemon has left this position, because this was back 7, 8 years ago, 10 years ago maybe. He's left this position. This statement was made in 2013, so we're talking 10 years ago. I would completely agree with Don Lemon on what he's going to say now, except he doesn't believe it anymore. And if he does believe it, people like Al Sharpton will slap the taste out of his mouth if he got on television and said this now. Al Sharpton will slap the taste out of his mouth, and Obama would disenfranchise him from the lesbian and gay club. So, but this was some solid stuff coming from Don Lemon. So at one point, Don Lemon must have been a genuine person in my eyes back in 2013. Go ahead, Mr. Engineer. Everybody, listen to this very carefully. If you don't listen to nothing else about Don Lemon, listen to this.
Here's just 5 things that you should think about doing. Here's number 5. Pull up your pants. Some people, a lot of them black, gave me flack for saying that recently on the Wendy Williams show. I hosted a special on the N-word, suggesting that black people stop using it and that entertainers stop deluding yourselves or themselves and others that you're somehow taking the word back. Now, number 3, respect where you live. Start small by not dropping trash, littering in your own communities. Number 2, finish school. You want to break the cycle of poverty? Stop telling kids they're acting white because they go to school or they speak proper English. And number 1, and probably the most important, just because you can have a baby, it doesn't mean you should.
You know what I'm going to do? I'm going to ask the engineer to clip it. We're going to start running this as a break clip. That segment. But I would agree with Don Lemon on the Lamone. I would agree with him on those issues that he just expressed. I think they're important. And if he believed this 10 years ago, now he can't say that now. If he said that now they'll run him out of Dodge, Al Sharpton will slap the taste out of his mouth. And, they'll disenfranchise him from the House Negro tribes. So he's had to change it. But he was speaking truth. I mean, it's actually, and he used to live in Harlem, but I think he got fed up with that. But that's a pretty good clip. Imagine, if we could get that kind of public figures saying this consistently on television to black people. You're running around here having babies like you don't, like, what the hell is wrong with you? And then everybody embracing it. You won't pull up your pants all down, you're showing your underwear, and you dirty up your own neighborhood. And anybody who tries to go to school or try to come to the outlaw high school to better themselves, you call them to acting like they're white, and then you call Pastor Man and he ain't for the black man. He try to be white, try to teach white principles, and By the way, here, let me say this too. Also, I'm gonna tell y'all something. Though I graduated from an all-black school in North Carolina, 1965, I lived in North Carolina. Now this is all true. I lived in North Carolina for the first 18 years of my life, right? I went to school there. I went to town. I went, grocery stores. I went to, I drove the roads, and, got my driver's license. I did all of that. I was never once in the 18 years of my living in North Carolina, which was a plantation, I never got called the N-word by a white person. Not once. Not once. I never got called the N-word by a white person. The sheriff, his name was Hagan, and a bunch of other people, and, the doctors, Dr. Johnson, the dentist, and, Mr. Odom, who owned the supermarkets, and, the person owned the pharmacy and the B.C. Moore store, and all around there. And then I went out. I was outside this little luncheonette, played Tom's Luncheonette, where I used to shine shoes, right? And I worked for a man named Huggins, who owned the shoe. But none of these white people ever called me the N-word. The first time I got called the N-word by a white person when I came to New York. Go figure. Nobody in North Carolina. So you got to realize, so when you're talking about plantation racism, I have to wait a minute. The way you said the South was so bad, no one ever called me the N-word. And the other thing is that, Whoopi Goldberg said, well, we black people, we can call each other the N-word, but you white people can't use it. That's sick as hell, you know that? But of course, you got some really, really sick people that have been promoted. But I'm amazed, and I would take my hat off if I had my hat on. I take my hat off to Don Lemon for this segment of what he said in 2013. I would like to know, Don Lemon, even though he's gay, he may be straight. Wait a minute, that don't work. Gay, he may be straight. But even though he's gay, he may be straight in some of his ideologues. Because he said Nikki Haley, she ain't in her prime, and he's right. But there's something, you know what I think? I'll tell you what I think, because I figure y'all want to know, and I know because I tell y'all. It is rumored and pretty much substantial that Nikki Haley has been in bed with more men than some of the beds at Rikers Island. That woman, Nikki Haley. And so I don't know if he was talking about her prime being she been wore out by all the men she been sleeping with. They done wore her out. Okay, all right. So listen, if you're offended by that, it's a little bit, risky, and I understand a little bit off color and everything else. And so if you're offended by that, please forgive Pastor Manny. Say, Pastor Manny, we forgive you for telling the truth. But I don't know what Don Lemon was going at, but I would like to receive a return of the 2013 Don Lemon. Will the Don Lemon of 2013 back that up, Ms. Cindy? Can you back that up? Will the Don Lemon of 2013 please return? Because if the Don Lemon of 2013 return, I'll have him on the Manning Report. Don't know if he'll come. But now he's got to live among all these liberals, all these woke people, all these critical race. What is that critical race theory? I got the critical race theory. I lived in North Carolina for 18 years, worked around white folk everywhere I looked was white people, everywhere. Never did they ever call me or anybody I know the N-word. Anyway, so Ms. India, this one more time, I want to recall the Don Lemon of 2013. One more time, Ms. India. Here you go.
Black people, if you really want to fix the problem, here's just 5 things that you should think about doing. Here's number 5, pull up your pants. Some people, a lot of them black, gave me flack for saying that recently on the Wendy Williams show. I hosted a special on the N-word, suggesting that black people stop using it, and that entertainers stop deluding yourselves or themselves and others that you're somehow taking the word back. Now, number 3, respect where you live. Start small by not dropping trash, littering in your own communities. Number 2, finish school. You want to break the cycle of poverty? Stop telling kids are acting white because they go to school or they speak proper English. And number 1, and probably the most important, just because you can have a baby, it doesn't mean you should.
I think that, how does Don Lemon now, because you got the June 19th woman with all that red hair with her phony self. You got all the critical race theory promoters. You got the woke society promoters. You got all these people. How does he sit there now and listen to them? Because I know, listen, this truth does not change. I don't care how gay you get. You can be gayer than Liberace. Listen, this truth that this man Don Lemon is speaking does not change. This is true. Your black people, every time you're having babies, don't know who the dad is. Mama don't even know who the dad is. Baby ain't gonna never know. The mama don't know who the dad is. The baby ain't gonna never know who the dad is. Every time you're having babies out of both of your panty legs and then pulling your pants down and not going to school and then anybody who tries to get ahead in life with adopting themselves to the Protestant work ethic and to the structural society of people who built great society, talking and try to get themselves a good education, you ridicule them. What this man says is still in him. It's got to be still in him. It got to be still in him. So, how does he sit down on television with all them freaks? All that hair color, all kind of stuff, got all kind of horse hair in their head, running around there flanging all that horse like a pony's tail and talking about we black people, we have got to rediscover our history. We have got to reimagine ourselves. What the hell? Don, I'm going to promote this. I'm going to try to get this out. Anyway, so we'll see what else Tucker Carlson had to say, Mr. Engineer. Then I got to go. But what the point of it is here, well, go ahead, Mr. Engineer. He didn't say nothing about Lawrence O'Donnell. He didn't say nothing about that guy, Lawrence O'Donnell. That's what I want to say.
So stop littering, show respect, go to school, because the rules apply to everybody no matter what they look like. It's impossible to imagine the Don Lemon of today. It's impossible to imagine
You're
anyone
absolutely right, Tucker. I agree with you. Well, come on, man. Come on. I can call you homie now. Call my homie. Tucker calls my homies because, would you imagine Don Lemon today? That was 2013, right? And it was during the Obama, if you will, siege. Anyway, scratch this guy. I want to show you something. What after Don Lemon said this in 2013 and moved out of Harlem a couple of years ago, let me show you what Harlem looks like now. I got a video I want to show you put together by Captain David Lewis and brother Honaker. Mr. Engineer, look at this. Look at where Don Lemon tried to tell people something in 2013. Look at where we are now. And by the way, me, Pastor Manning, hear a lone voice speaking and praying for all these people. Go ahead, Miss India, roll that clip. Check this out, everybody.
Jesus, will you take my hand? Because I don't understand. I don't know which way to go. A lot of things that I just don't know. Jesus, will you take my hand? Because I don't understand. It's a long, dark road, and I carry a heavy load. Jesus, will you take my hand? Because I don't understand. Jesus, lead me to the promised land. I don't know which way to go. Jesus, will you take my hand? Jesus,
All right, picking up on Don Lemon's 2013 statements regarding 5 things that black people ought to do. These photos, these videos I just showed you were all taken last year in the year. Most of them were taken in the year 2022. This is the plight, and taken here in Harlem, of black people since Barack Hussein Obama, since the so-called first black woman justice, Ketanji Brown, since the first black woman vice president, Camelback Ain't Black Harris. You got to figure black people are the damn stupidest people on the planet. And I don't say, I would never call a Hamite stupid. I would never call them crazy. I would never call them ignorant. But I'll call black people that all day long. They got to be the dumbest ass people on the planet. Uh-oh, we got a black president. Look at what is happening to Harlem. Look at what has happened to the men. And these are just cameo snapshots of what's happening in Harlem, in Fort Greene, in South Central Los Angeles, Overtown Miami, down in Southeast Washington. and south side of Chicago. This is just a snapshot of the scourge. And yet we got a black president. Oh Lord, Jesse Jackson crying out there in Grant Park. We got a black president. Look at what, to get a black president, this is the ravageness that has happened. And then you got that creep, that Jay-Z, that sold out South Brooklyn to build the Barclays Center and put poverty in Brooklyn there, and gave Fort Greene over to the Jewish coalition out there, along with that Eric Adams. You got to figure these are some of the dumbest ass people you're going to have, black people. And the dumber they are, the more position they get on white television stations, newscasters, professors at university. The truth is the truth. Don Lemon, and you know it. And the poverty, the brokenness, the shelters, the runaway pregnancy. It is. How could anybody, as a collective group, be that stupid? You know, why don't I tell you what? Jimmy Carter, you know, he's in hospice now and everything. Left the president. He left the presidency, and he wasn't in the best standing with it. So he became a global humanitarian. And we started working for Habitat for Humanity, built over 1,000. Jimmy Carter actually put nails and drywall and roofing on over 1,000 houses since his presidency, and maybe more. You think that long-legged Mac Daddy Obama, you see where those men were gathered around the store with their pants down or on the street, on 125th Street, sleeping. You think Obama would come there and stand there and preach that, brother, stand up and get your stuff? You think he would come to Harlem? Or you think he would, all those photos do you think Obama would come and stand there where that man was on the street, laying on the street on a piece of cardboard, rolling back and forth, and all them black people walking around? You think Obama would come and stand on 125th Street and Lenox Avenue and say, brothers, we need to get out? You think he would do that? You think he would leave his mansion up there in Martha's Vineyard or his mansion out there in Honolulu and come to Harlem and talk to the people and tell them to get no, he ain't coming because he ain't got no message. The only message black people hear is that the white man's against us. And we got a black president. We got a black mayor of Houston. We got a black mayor. That's the only message. They don't have a message of truth. They don't have a message from God. They don't have a message of humanity. Black people, they're as lost as any damn thing I've ever seen that's lost, and don't even have any breadcrumbs like Hansel and Gretel to get back home. Pastor Man, he ain't for the black man. Pastor Man was since our first black president. Hell, Obama was a white man, he ain't black. Boy, his mama was white. Ask any Jew. Ask a Jew. Ask a Jew, is Obama black or is he white? Ask him. Ask any Jew. Ask the Jews that run the major networks. Ask them. Those that go to kebab, those that go to the synagogue. Ask them if Obama. Ask a Jew if Obama is black, and they'll tell you he's white. Why? Because his mama was white. They're worse now. Can I show you what Harlem used to look like before Dr. King started marching that civil rights, when that Punjab boy over yonder in India talking about, nonviolence? Can I show you what Harlem used to look like? Now, you just saw the pictures a few moments ago. This is the same street 60 years ago, 70 years ago. This is the same street you see men sleeping on right now. This is what it looked like 70 years ago. Oh, we got a first black president. Oh, Pastor Man, he ain't for the black man. He ain't for the black man. He's against black man. This is what the stoops and the streets used to look like 70 years ago, before that Dr. King started all that stuff. Before all that civil rights, before that W.E.B. Du Bois, before all that madness got started. This is what Harlem used. This is what black people used to look like before they had a black judge, before they had a black mayor. They ain't never had no black president. We're still waiting on that, because any self-respecting Jew that knows the Tanakh will tell you Obama's a white man. Ask a Jew. I dare you. Ask any Jew if Obama is black. They'll tell you, no, he's white. Obama ain't no black. You got these stupid. You can sell black folk anything. Somebody done bought the Brooklyn Bridge because you can't sell them. Then they got this concholine hair Al Sharpton running around there. He's the undertaker. Every time, the buzzard. Every time somebody black dies by the hand of a police, that boy is right there like a buzzard. So how you know something? Something what that's for? Look up in the sky. Buzzers are circling. Something dead somewhere. How you know? Because the buzzers are circling. How you know somebody's dead? Al Sharpton is circling. And then after Al Sharpton, in comes Ben the Crump, the undertaker, to pick up the bodies and bury the bodies and make plenty of money. This is what black people used to look like. These are the black folk that I'm for. No, I ain't for these. I swear before God and some other white men. You can't figure this out. What the hell are you voting for Obama for? What? Ketanji Brown Jackson, hell, she's married to a white man. Kamala Harris married to a white. Couldn't they find somebody black to ring their bells? What is wrong with y'all? I swear. And it's in them. It's in, and here they go, Eddie Gloyd. Here comes Eddie Gloyd, here comes Jonathan Capehart. Here they come. Here they come. Michael Eric Dyson. Here they come. Here come Van Jones. Here they all come on television. What do you think? Well, all right, ta-ta, we need wake up what? Woke, we need to teach, this is stupid as hell, right? Woke. We need to teach white people, young white children, 8, 9, 10 years old, about black people's history. What the hell they won't know that? Who cares? Who cares? And we have to, critical race theory, right? Something that's, I got obviously under some school, critical race. So they use the term theory because they know it was very popular with people like Einstein. The theory of relativity. It makes you sound like you're smart. When you use a word like theory, people think you're smart as hell, right? Then they say critical. Black people, critical race theory, right? Critical. Black people don't know what critical means, except somebody who's been in the hospital in critical condition. So are you saying the race, the theory of black people's race is in critical condition on the deathbed in the ICU wards? If you're saying black people are in the ICU wards on the deathbed, then you're right. It is critical. Black people in a critical condition. You're right about that. And the worst thing is that their leaders are all insane. All right, okay, so I said all this about Don Lemon, all right, okay. All right, but I'm going to take a break. I'll be right back. Don't go anywhere. Don't go anywhere.
It isn't just about making bent legs straight. It's about enabling these children to re-enter society. Someday they can marry, they can get a job, they can work. It really, truly gives them their life back.
Their medical photos that we take kind of show it all. Their pre-op picture, none of them are smiling and they all look really scared. And then in their post-op picture, they have the biggest smiles on and they're so happy. It's only 2 pictures, but you can see that a journey has happened.
They never even dared to dream before, and now suddenly it's reality that they can dream and that these dreams could actually come true.
right, so there was a big interview yesterday with this Emily Corris, who was a forewoman of the grand jury down there with Fannie Willis in Atlanta on the whole issue about Donald Trump's telephone call to Brad Raffensperger, can you find me 11,780 more votes? And a lot of people were interviewed. Lindsey Graham was interviewed, Mark Meadows and Giuliani. But she's a forewoman, right? So she, I think, spoke to the Associated Press, the MSNBC, and New York Times interview yesterday indicating that, according to, she'd been a forewoman, but there's certain things that she's restricted from saying because, there are laws once you become you can't just, but I think what she was indicating is that if Trump is going to get indicted down in Georgia, and all the liberals were jumping up and down like a bunch of cats on a hot tin roof. And she just kept indicating that Trump is going to get indicted. Trump is going to get indicted. She didn't say that, but she intimated it. So I'll tell you what, I'll let you listen to that. This is an MSNBC Blanche, somebody who interviewed her yesterday. Just yesterday. Now, she's a young girl. She's about a young woman. She's 36 years old. And, she looks a little, I don't know what to say about it. She sounds a little off chain to me. But anyway, go ahead. Roll this. Take a look at this, everybody.
And so we're talking about multiple people.
Yes.
How long, how many people? Was this a long list?
It's not a short list.
So we're talking about more than a dozen people?
I would say that, yes.
Okay. Are these recognizable names that people would know?
There are certainly names that you would recognize, yes. There are names also that you might not recognize, or there are names that you might recognize as someone who's followed this case, but then, your mother might not recognize because she doesn't care about the intricacies of the case. But there definitely are some names that you expect.
Did the grand jury recommend an indictment of former President Trump?
I'm not going to speak on exact indictments.
Would we be surprised? Are there bombshells of who is being recommended for indictment?
I don't think that there are any giant plot twists coming. I don't think that there are any giant, that's not the way I expected this to go at all. I don't think that's
hold on right there, Mr. I think that, I mean, a lot of people are interpreting what she is saying is that Trump is going to be indicted. And they're all jumping up and down. The liberals, they're all having parties they're having cocaine parties. Just from this one interview, that they think that Trump's going to be indicted. Maybe I'm misreading. Maybe her demeanor is so confusing. She's, like a valley girl or something like that. It's probably turning me off. And so I'm not able to read her correctly. I'm not necessarily reading that Trump's going to be indicted. Or that the grand jury recommended that Trump get indicted. I think that's what this grand jury does not indict. It recommends indictments. But, her valley girl demeanor kind of throws me off. But the liberals are having cocaine parties like you won't believe. They've been bought up more champagne than Drizzly than you can shake a stick at. I shouldn't give Drizzly any play right here today. But, go ahead, Ms. Angel. Let's listen to the rest of her. She's a little valley girl, if you ask me.
For anyone.
So nothing that would surprise people who have been following this?
Probably not. I wouldn't want to characterize anyone else's reaction, of course, but so that was when we heard a lot in testimony. But probably not. It probably wouldn't shock you. I would not expect you to be too shocked, no.
And that includes the former president, potentially?
Potentially. It might. I think that there were a lot of people that we could have subpoenaed, and there are a lot of people that we honestly might have subpoenaed, but there was also, I don't know, partially the time factor. If we had subpoenaed everyone who had potentially something to say about this, we would probably be there for 2 years. You know what I mean? There are just so many people involved. And I think at some point through this investigation, especially as we began to speak to higher profile witnesses, I think some of the combativeness that we experienced meant that the DA's team, as well as us, kind of started to pick our battles. And when someone, like, for example, goes before the January 6th committee and says they plead the fifth 200 times, do you really expect them to come?
I'm broadcasting this myself, but I think we're our major network. I don't know if I would have carried her. Her demeanor tends to cheapen the authenticity or the originality or the sacredness of the grand jury process. I mean, if this is the person who's the foreman of the grand, what the hell are the rest of the people on there like? And not that youth can be a scourge in this regard, but the way she's conducting herself, I don't know if she is seasoned enough to make decisions about whether the former president of the United States of America should be indicted or not, or whether Mark Meadows should be indicted or Lindsey Graham. Lindsey Graham should have been indicted and put in jail 1,000 years ago, if you ask me. But, I mean, something about this doesn't feel right to me. And even though I'm broadcasting myself, I'm broadcasting it to show the lunacy of it. But I tell you, the liberals, they were all over everywhere. I mean, this story outplayed Joe Biden over there in Poland and in Ukraine. They took that off the air. I mean, Joe Biden and Kiev went over there with Zelensky, and then in Poland talking about Russia and China and Xi Jinping, and they just took this off the air. Bam! That went by way of the cut flower, and all of a sudden this woman was everywhere in the liberal media. I mean, she was everywhere. But it seems to cheapen our sense of the sacredness of the grand jury and who gets hauled before a judge for very serious crimes. I'm going to let you listen to a little bit more of that. Maybe you feel like, maybe you have a little bit, maybe you think I'm, a bit, prejudiced about the whole. They're not racially prejudiced, but there's prejudice in terms of that she's a young woman, and perhaps I think there's a better demeanor that could be displayed. But go ahead, Ms. Engineer. Go ahead. Let's listen a little bit more of this, and I got to let this woman go.
For you and say something different. You know what I mean? And so it became a battle we didn't need to fight when we could fight other battles and make way with those.
Sure. Did you personally want to hear from the former president?
I wanted to hear from the former president, but honestly, I kind of wanted to subpoena the former president because I got to swear everybody in. And so I thought it'd be really cool to get 60 seconds with President Trump of me looking at him and being like, do you solemnly swear? And me getting to swear him in. I kind of just thought that would be an awesome moment.
I mean, that would be unnatural. Obviously, she likes the president. She likes Trump. She admires him. She ought to be a moment with the Beatles or something, getting off the air in 1964, getting off the plane in Yankee Stadium. But getting off LaGuardia Airport, wherever they got off the plane at. I want to be right there, see eyeball to eyeball, and look him in the eye and say, "Here, do you solemnly swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, nothing but the truth?" Now that would have been a question for Trump. He may say, "Wait a minute now, will you promise to go out with me?" Anyway, so here so it seems to me that she got a crush on Trump. What do you think? I don't know. I've asked Engineer just back it up just a little bit. Just back it up just a tad. Seems to me she admires him. I mean, nothing wrong if she does. Go ahead and admire Trump. A whole lot of folk admire Trump. Stormy Daniels did. Well, I don't know about Stormy Daniels, but and I'm not trying to down Trump. I'm just saying, is this the level of is this what Fannie Willis is dealing with down there in Georgia? One more time, Ms. Engineer, about her and calling Trump. He wasn't called to testify, but just one more time.
We expect them to come before you and say something different. You know what I mean? And so it became a battle we didn't need to fight when we could fight other battles and make way with those.
Sure. Did you personally want to hear from the former president?
I wanted to hear from the former president, but honestly, I kind of wanted to subpoena the former president because I got to swear everybody in. And so I thought it'd be really cool to get 60 seconds with President Trump of me looking at him and being like, do you solemnly swear? And me getting to swear him in. I kind of just thought that would be an awesome moment. I can see how trying to get the former president to come talk to us would have been a year in negotiation by itself.
All right, so let's move on to something else. All right, move on. Everybody say move on. Say, yeah, Pastor Man, let's move on. Let's move on. Sean Hannity last night was ranking. They called the Secretary of Transportation, Pete Buttigieg, who's married. Is Pete Buttigieg's husband named Chastity or something like that? Or is they got I think they adopted some children, right? Somebody's named Chastity. You know what chastity is like, well, let's not get into that. But there's another word that follows chat. Well, anyway, so Pete Buttigieg, I think his husband's name, I don't know who's who. We know he's gay, Pete Buttigieg. So Sean Hannity calls him Pothole Pete. But I got another name for him. I call him Pete Booty Booty. Anyway, so Sean Hannity was ranking him last night like you won't believe. Miss NJ, have that clip. Go and listen about him not going to East Palestine, Ohio, with that train wreck out there. Call him Pothole Pete.
Pothole Pete Buttigieg, now America's incompetent transportation secretary. He has been utterly MIA, and in just 2 years, he aimlessly has presided over multiple airline fiascos, chaos at America's shipping ports, a supply chain nightmare that is still ongoing, and now a disaster in East Palestine, Ohio, a train wreck followed by a controlled chemical burn that released all these dangerous chemicals into the air, the soil, the water. We have dead fish, dead animals, sick people. But Pothole Pete, he's nowhere to be found. Same with Joe. And for days he has said nothing, did nothing about a toxic fire so huge that it could be seen on Pittsburgh's weather radar. Now, ultimately, Pothole Pete, he was shamed into making a statement. Last week, he declared that East Palestine was getting more than enough attention. You decide.
While this horrible situation has gotten a particularly high amount of attention, there are roughly 1,000 cases a year of a train derailing. Obviously, they have levels of severity, but where all of that points us to is a need to continue to raise the bar on rail safety.
Oh, really? That's the answer, Pete? Train wrecks followed by massive chemical burns that kill off local fish and wildlife?
I have to tell you that, I have to tell you that the fact that Pete Booty Booty, they call him, Sean calls him Pothole Pete. I prefer to call him Pete Booty Booty. That Pete Booty Booty has not been to East Palestine, Ohio. This thing happened over a week ago. And he's not traveled to the disaster zone. I think Tribulation Trump is there right now as I'm speaking. I don't have the footage of it, but we'll get it maybe later. But how can the Secretary of Transportation, there's been this major train derailment, all these cars off the track and this fire burning, all these chemicals all up in the air and everything's smoking and burning, fish dying, land being polluted. And Pete Booty Booty, who's the Secretary of the Transportation, who should be overseeing this event, has not been to the scene of the crime. I mean, the mayor of East Palestine, Ohio, said the other day about Joe Biden, my time Biden being over there at Ukraine was a slap in the face of the people there in East Palestine, because Joe Biden, my time, has not been there either to see about the people there in his own home, his own America, the state of Ohio. So Pete Booty Booty, I think, is. I mean, I'm trying to figure out, why don't you go there, man? Let me tell you something. These people, these corporations, they don't care nothing about poor people. I tell you that right now. And it ain't whether you're black or white. They just don't care. It's about the money. It ain't about black and white. It's about green. Pete Booty Booty, the reason why I think that Pete Booty Booty has not been to East Palestine is because he would have to make some sort of declarative statement about what he's going to do. And, the environmental protection, they got this Hammack, this big black guy running around there. He represents the Environmental Protection Agency or something like that from the federal government. He's out there drinking water by the glass full, saying that the water is safe. He said, a big black guy just drinking water. The water is safe. He's going to be dead. Well, anyway. So I think if Pete Booty Booty went, he'd have to make some sort of statement as well. I don't believe the water's safe. I wouldn't drink it if I were out. Anyway, a little bit more of this, and I got to get out of here. My time is gone for today. Y'all have occupied more than my time than I'm supposed to give out. But go ahead, Mr. Engineer.
just an average day. Creeks, streams filled with toxic substances that can be seen by the naked eye. If Pothole Pete seems lazy and out of touch to all of you, that is because it's true. Recently he demanded Americans trust him simply because he was once the mayor of South Bend, Indiana, where he, quote, dealt with a lot of disasters. That's what he said. Take a look.
The administration has come under some fire for its response. The mayor of East Palestine has said it took nearly 2 weeks for the White House to contact him. There were shouts of "Where's Pete Buttigieg?" at a town hall meeting last week. What's your response to that? When are you going to go to East Palestine?
Well, I am planning to go, and our folks were on the ground from the first hours. I do want to stress that the NTSB needs to be able to do its work independently. But when I go, the focus is going to be on action. Look, I was mayor of my hometown for 8 years. We dealt with a lot of disasters, natural and human.
A lot of disasters. Okay, so we did a little digging and found some of those so-called disasters that Pothole Pete was forced to manage as mayor. According to the South Bend Tribune, one of his greatest challenges was turning several one-way streets into two-way streets. That's a big challenge. Another major challenge for Pothole Pete, the mayor, well, he had to figure out what to do with all of his city's empty lots. And last but not least, his nickname, Pothole Pete, well, he has it for a reason because under his leadership, South Bend, Indiana was home
to... you might do better if you call him Pete Booty Booty. All right, listen, I got to go, but I understand that Don Lemon was back on that CNN morning show with the women that hates his living gut. And I think Caden Collins is one, Poppy Hollow is the other. They hate that boy's living guts. And, I may have to revamp the real, after looking at the 2013 segment of Don Lemon, I know that's the kind of truth that anybody, one should know that truth. Now, a lot of black people, they don't know that. They don't have no idea. I mean, anybody half their mind walking around with their pants down. And I think the other thing is that the rap music industry has become a religion that, that has poisoned, it has poisoned people. It has corrupted babies in the womb, rap music. So these people are beyond reach. They're a group of people that you just have to, do what Jesus did to Sodom and Gomorrah, put them all in a doggone city and drop fire and brimstone on them because they're incorrigible. You can't deal. You can't teach these rap music, and they're millenniums, most of them. You can't teach them anything. Anyway, but I've got to get out of here. I got to go. Do we have what now? Do we? Captain David Lewis said he had 12 watts with 12 Guzman song from last Saturday with it was too choppy. Let's do it anyway. Let's take a listen to it. It's a little bit. The sound kept dropping out this past Sabbath, right? Because I want to play it and see what it sounds like. And so I want to warn everybody this song by 12 and Michael Guzman. I like this couple. I think they look good together, don't y'all? I like them. I like 12 and Michael. They look good together. I performed their wedding ceremony the other day, and I had a great big meal. We were dancing in the streets when they got married. So I want to, but if it's a little disconcerting, you'll get past that, right? And then after that, I think maybe we could have Myriad and Blessed Assurance. I don't know how quick our engineer can. He's quick on the draw, Let's see how fast he can get all this organized. Look at these skies behind me. The sky has not changed. Look like a big, massive China balloon floating out there behind me on the here today. But listen, everybody, we got a lot of work that we're doing. We're making advances. We're still fighting the Mellon Bank and the foreclosure and all that stuff. And we're giving God the praise for so many of y'all that stepped forward to help us financially, prayerfully, and otherwise. I need some of y'all that listen to me to start helping me. You listen to me every day and you listen, but you don't ever help. I need money to do this work. See all this fancy equipment, all this stuff we're doing. We big time like ABC, with this street scenes and all this mechanical, all these computers and camera and all these cameramen and all these technicians and everything. And we do, so, come on now. Help us out. All right, this is a beautiful couple. These are called the Guzmans. This is Michael and 12 Guzman. And they're going to drop this tune on you. Go ahead, Miss Engineer.
The steps of a good man are ordered by the Lord. He delighteth in his way. Though he fall, he shall not be cast down. For the Lord uphold him with his hands. He shall never beg bread, never be defeated. For the Lord is our shelter and our shield. He shall never beg bread and will never be defeated. For the Lord, you're our comfort and our peace. For the Lord, you're our refuge and our God. I have been young, now been old, yet have I never ever seen the righteous forsaken nor seed begging bread. He is merciful and he is blessed. He shall never beg bread and will never be defeated. For the Lord, you are our comfort and our peace. He shall never beg bread and will never be defeated.
Blessed assurance, Jesus is